Samuel L. Jackson's tweet. I can just hear him.
From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2017. And now, here they are, with a big smile on their face.
And a song in our hearts.
Jim and Rich.
Excuse me, took a slurp of coffee. I just showed Rich a tweet off of Samuel L. Jackson's page, and unfortunately we can't repeat.
Good. Good.
Hey,
we don't like that kind of stuff on our show.
I know. We are always, pure 100, ivory so
pure as the driven snow that we haven't had any of.
That we haven't had any. Hey, you realize in about 4 minutes the true start of the football season is really beginning. They start to be able to negotiate with free agents.
Oh, that's neat. Cutler's gone, right?
Nothing's been said.
I think he'll be gone.
I think he'll be gone too. But tell me, is Mike Glenn worth $14 million a year, or Mike Glennon rather?
Well,
a guy who hasn't started a game in 2 years.
I keep hearing that Ryan Pace is a great evaluator of talent. Did Mike Glennon become a hot subject overnight or something? I know that he was maybe one of the guys they were looking at, but I hadn't seen today's paper. So.
No, I mean...
and the papers generally don't know what they're talking
about. They generally don't know what they're talking about. And I mean, according to the Players Association, the Bears have about $51.5 million in cap space this year, which is good position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, a guy who hasn't started a game since 2014, is he worth $14 to $15 million a year?
Honestly, I think the first place they're going to spend some of that cap money they have is with a safety. There's some good ones that are on the free agent market, and they may go after one of those.
Well, I know they should go after safety. I know they tendered a contract to one of the cornerbacks from last year, Bryce Callahan.
Yeah, they like Bryce Callahan, and but I would say for the Bears, if I'm picking, I know that the other day they were in the paper, they were talking about a D lineman, I think from Alabama, one of the big schools that they might like. But I
was thinking that too, and I think I was thinking about him too, and I'm thinking he's the guy who got in trouble.
I don't know.
Just recently too.
I'm thinking though, and I don't know. I'm not suggesting this with the number 3 pick, but with if everything you read is accurate, it's a good year for tight ends and safeties, and the Bears can use help at both of those positions. So
Deion Sims is out there.
Maybe after whoever they decide on the first pick. Why not go for that tight end or safety?
Sure.
There's depth in those. There's depth at those positions in the draft.
Sure.
So,
and they seem to be they're willing to spend money on receivers and cornerbacks. I mean, Jeffrey's an option, but I think he's gone.
Yeah.
Kenny Stills is out there.
Yeah. Well, how about your man, the guy that they're really big time hot on, Juju Smith-Schuster?
Oh man.
Huh?
I want to see him in a Bears uniform
because we missed out on Ha Clinton Dix.
That's right.
So
I want to see
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
There's
got to be a story behind that.
You
texted me that name. There has to be a story.
I don't know. That's what happened. Never mind. I'm not even going to get into that. That's not exactly one of the.
Don't.
That's not exactly one of the, a Chicago Bear sounding name.
No.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
No. I mean,
That's why I thought, Clinton Dix had no chance of
no
being here.
chance either. I'm surprised we have Crevion LeBlanc,
Yeah.
which I still believe is a winery out in Napa Valley.
Jim, you know, though, it's got to be the older I get, the more I realize what a tough thing it's got to be to, you know, identify talent, and not just identify talent, but talent that's going to fit with the club that you're operating. That is not an easy thing to do, I don't think.
You have to not only look at the talent, but you have to look at the person,
Right.
too. And does it fit within the culture you're trying to create or have?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting if you know, you listen to some of the guys on the Score that they're football experts. That's a big part of it. That Greg Gabriel talks about all the times that he sat in on interviews at the combine, and you know sometimes what do you get? You get maybe 15 minutes with a guy, you know, and he has the opportunity to make his case and make his impression at that point, and you have to wonder. I think I can't remember who they were talking about. Somebody at the combine who's had some difficulty. Gosh, did Joe Mixon go to the combine?
I'm not sure if he went to the
I'm
combine
not sure,
or not.
but somebody who'd had some difficulty, and they talked about what kind of impression he made, whether it was good or bad. You know, he said, you have to wonder if by the time the guy has answered that same question about whatever the incident was 7 or 8 times.
Yeah,
Is he
he's
gonna-
got it down by now.
Either he's got it down or he's going to cop an attitude like,
Okay,
you're asking
again?
me this again?
Yeah.
You know.
Actually, I had a laugh because this was the first year that I remember reading that the interviews were 15 minutes, and it sounded to me like the Bears get right. It's almost like an episode of Perry Mason or something, where they get right down to tearing into the subject, and they get into the nitty gritty very quickly. And
Which is what
fine.
you should do.
My only take on that would be these guys aren't stupid. They have agents. They're well aware that you're looking for a possible flaw in their character, and you know they can probably guard against that if that's the way they are. Now if you're extremely cocky or arrogant, you might say, okay, that's not going to happen. But you know, I'm just going to be me. But most guys are going to just say, you know, they're going to play a nice guy and answer the questions the way they think they are the questioners want them to be answered, and that'll be it.
They want to ask what they want to hear, or they're going to answer what they want to hear. I was just glancing at this article here, the NFL Power Ratings. The most interesting teams to watch in free agency from 32 down to 1. Let's see, number 32, the Los Angeles Chargers. Their biggest need, offensive tackle. Number 31, the Kansas City Chiefs, the inside linebacker. Where are the Bears? Where are the Bears, and what do they say they need? Just kind of flipping down this. New York Jets, biggest need, quarterback. Hey, I know a guy here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Jets had 4 quarterbacks on the roster last year, and they still need one.
That's where that's why Jay Cutler has lasted in Chicago. You'll sit around coffee or a couple of drinks with people, and they'll say, "What the heck? What is Cutler still doing here?"
Yeah.
My response to that question is always, so what's out there that we can get that's better than Cutler?
Right.
And it's usually zilch.
Right. Now, the Bears, this article ranks them as the 14th most interesting team. They indicate $51.3 million cap space. Their biggest need is a quarterback. Yes, Mike Glennon is going to get overpaid, but it's hard to find a quarterback in the NFL, and the Bears are a good fit. The Bears could also consider using the 3rd pick of the draft on a quarterback and use the cap room for other issues like cornerback and receiver. This isn't a quick rebuild. There are a lot of serious holes. You could conceivably with this team and the way they are, you could conceivably be looking for a quarterback every year for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I really this website that you just went to is saying that the Bears are going to go after Glennon.
Well, they don't say they're going to go after Glennon, but they also say that this is a possibility.
Now, who is he with? Is he with the?
He's with
the
Buccaneers.
Bucs?
He's with the Buccaneers.
So he's sitting behind Winston. He's not going to play there
Right.
anyway.
And the year before, before that, he was behind Josh McCown.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and how many years has he even been around, Mike Glennon? Has he ever been a starter?
Yes. I think at one point he was. I don't think he's started a game since 2013.
See, I don't believe that. I don't know. I mean, anything could happen, but I don't believe the Bears are going there.
I hope not.
Plus, they would lay such a what would you say an egg as far as popular. As with the media, the fans, it would be a bomb, a total bomb, if they spent a lot of money to get Mike Glennon here.
Yeah. All I could think of when I was driving here this morning and had the radio on and they were talking about Mike Glennon, all I could think of for some reason, I just had terrible visions and flashbacks to Rick Meyer.
Yeah, we've made some. I mean, I was Meyer. I don't think so much of, but who was the quarterback we got from the Steelers that really had?
Cordell
Stewart.
Cordell Stewart. Yeah.
I mean, some of the people that we've brought in here. I remember I jokingly said that Henry Burris, I think, did he retire now in the CFL?
No, Henry Burris is 172 years old, and he's still going on in the Canadian Football League.
But I'm thinking to myself, we had Rick Meyer, Cordell Stewart. I mean, how much worse could Henry Burris have been? I mean,
Jonathan Quinn worse.
Jonathan Quinn worse. I doubt that.
Craig Krenzel worse.
Nah, I don't think so. I doubt it.
All I want is to look at my city's football team and actually want to come back and find them compelling enough to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it would.
I've divorced. I filed the papers and divorced them a couple of years ago. We'd like to reconcile.
Oh, okay. I mean, I saw a few games last year that I thought they were fairly entertaining. I mean, considering. I'll tell you what, I really think...
One game I watched, I thought they were good. They were entertaining. They lost, but I thought they put on a good effort, and I think it was the game against Tampa that they absolutely just stunk out the place.
I don't remember that.
It was one game. I think it was against Tampa that it was just bloody awful. All I could think of was one year, a couple of years prior when they played the Chiefs. And Kyle Orton was the quarterback for the Chiefs that day. And I'm looking at my Twitter feed, and Dan Bernstein from The Score tweeted out, "This game is so bad, my television smells."
I'd say because of the number of individuals involved, it's got to be the hardest sport to rebuild.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem too becomes. Every time you get strong in one area, if it takes you a little while, you may now all of a sudden those guys who are strong might be a little bit past their prime. So now we've built up wide receiver, but inside linebacker has gone back to seed. So now we got to build. It can get to be a never-ending thing.
And essentially, you're trying to with football. I guess you're really trying to rebuild on the fly.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't, that just doesn't happen. There is your farm system is the colleges.
Well,
the college game is quite different from the pro game. Ask any college quarterback who's trying to make it in the pros.
Think about this though, Jim. You'll hear people say, "Well, we got to rebuild with the draft." You have 53 people on a team. So let's just say you want to replace them all. Through the draft, and I understand that they signed free agents from college as well, but just let's say through seven picks.
7 picks.
That'll take you over 7 years to replace 53 players on the roster.
Right.
I'm not a it's got to be a combination of free agency and the draft. I mentioned to you that I heard for the first time I'd heard Ian Rappaport on the
Always good.
I think it was on the Score,
Always good to hear.
and he had said something that no, it might not have been Rappaport. I think they also had Tom Curran, who was I think a beat writer for the Patriots, on, and they asked him with Adrian Peterson, and I think there was another running back that was a pretty good running back coming onto the market. Would the Patriots look at any of those guys, and the question was, or would you just like pick a guy off the trash heap and play him? And Curran said, "Oh, definitely the trash heap. They're not going to spend a ton of money for an Adrian Peterson and get 1 year out of him. They're going to, And when you look at it, last year, I think I said this to you. All of a sudden, the Patriots had this Dion Lewis.
Yeah.
And I read an article about Dion Lewis, and I mean, for God's sakes, 2 years prior, I think the Browns had let him go.
Yeah.
But I put it this way: when you're playing with a good organization, if you're a solid football player, I'm not talking about a star, you can shine because you're surrounded by strong players.
You've got the talent,
right,
that surrounds you, and you've got a quarterback who can make his players look better.
Yeah, that's true.
It was kind of interesting when they were talking to when the guys on the Score were talking to Greg Gabriel one day. They asked him, "What's the worst workout you ever saw at the combine?" And he said, "Well, can you give me about a week to think about that?"
Mm-hmm.
But he said, "I can tell you one that I remember. Tom Brady, the year he came to the combine, and the first day they're doing, they're weighing him and measuring him, and he gets up there and takes his shirt off, and he said you could literally hear laughing in the room,
mm-hmm.
looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going, does he know what a weight room is? Oh my God, does he,
Yeah.
And his workout was okay.
Mm-hmm.
But now you look at him,
mm-hmm.
and whatever he had to do to put himself together, and the nutrition and everything else. But
yeah.
he says, and he said he ran like a 5.2 40. And that's the reason he was 198th in the draft.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You can never really judge, even with the interviews and things that they do, is just how when you say that say Brady's his draft day workout was okay. Some guys, and you've played sports.
Mm-hmm.
Some
guys
just cannot do it until the actual bell rings.
Right.
They're disinterested. They're bored. Right. They, But when the game day comes and the bell rings, or the whistle blows, whatever you want to say, they're there.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's very hard to judge. Who are those guys?
Who are those guys, and who has the potential to be those guys?
Yeah.
I'm just looking to see any interesting signings or any interesting news. Who's been released? The Buffalo Bills released tight end Gerald Christian. He's on the market.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm just looking to see if there was anything interesting out there.
Yeah, probably not quite yet.
No, not yet. It'll be interesting. Tampa Bay re-signed defensive end William Golston to a 5-year contract.
Well, there's the other thing, Jim. When we were kids, I could name you probably every player on the active roster of every pro football team.
Oh, yeah.
So, and, I might have a decent idea of how those players were. Today, I can't do that. And, like, when you say Tampa Bay re-signed
William
Golston, my first reaction is, who's William Golston? But that doesn't mean that he's not a good, solid player.
No.
I mean, and that's where you get a guy like, say, a Rappaport, who's really into this and knows the players. that's you're hoping that your GM is that way as well. I mean, where
equally in touch with who's out there. I mean, when you pull names out like Daryl Dess and Jack Stroud.
Oh God, yeah.
You are remember that proves you knew everyone on the roster in those days.
Oh well, I mean, they were, I believe, starting players on some teams that were really good teams.
Yeah,
so
I used to not only do that. You could give me a uniform number on the team, and I could tell you who it was.
That for sure. I mean, I can remember, Jim, my first job. I worked at where my father worked, and he worked in the office, and I worked in the warehouse. I'd come after school. And I'd make these. I'd make boxes. You know, they had a machine that put staples in the bottom, and I'd make boxes. Boring work. So I'd sit there and I'd go through a whole team's roster. You know, from 0 to whatever the numbers were at the time, and
like
just
89
think,
probably.
Think. Okay, who's number 72 on the Colts? Bob Vogel. Number 41 Tom Maddie. Number 45 Jerry Hill.
Tom Maddie with his crib sheet on his wrist there when he had to play quarterback.
And so I could name you every one of them. It was no big thing.
And by the way, I saw the crib sheet Tom Maddie had on his wrist in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
It should be there. That was one of the greatest things I think I ever really witnessed in pro football.
I know that's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I saw that.
You realize, I don't know what the rule was, but the Colts that year they had picked up Ed Brown right at the last, and I don't know if it was the rule for the playoffs or whatever, but the reason they actually used Maddie is because I don't think Brown was eligible. I don't know what the rule was,
but
in
those days.
Yeah,
we're talking.
We're going back way back.
Probably close to what, 50 years ago?
Yeah, probably so.
Probably close to that.
Yeah.
Jeez, we're old.
Yeah, for sure.
Sheesh.
I was on the computer one day, and they had. I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons, the 50 or 100 greatest players in Atlanta Falcons history. Anybody who makes a list like that, I give credit because I couldn't even name you 100 Atlanta Falcons players.
I could name you maybe 3.
But it really didn't upset me. I shouldn't say it this way, but it was surprising because Tommy Nobis, I don't think, even made the top 10. He was always my number one guy.
How could you make a list of great Atlanta Falcons and leave Nobis off?
Yeah. Well, he's in, but he wasn't in the top 10.
Oh, I thought they left him off.
No, they didn't leave him off. There was no way you'd ever leave him off. Yeah. He's just too good.
All I could you mentioned the Atlanta Falcons, and I think on one of those NFL films, one of those NFL blooper films and things they had when Norm Van Brocklin
was the coach
and called somebody over to the sidelines must have been during an exhibition game, put his arm around and said, "Son, don't give me any of that Harry High School hero horse bleep out there anymore. This isn't going to get you anything."
Yeah, Jim, I was thinking about my son Tom wants to become smarter. Okay, he wants to be an educated person. Okay, and this is a good time to do it because you're not going to do it in high school or college because they don't teach you they don't teach you much of anything.
John reached for the phone there for a moment. He's glad you. Yeah. I noticed he twitched when you said that and started to reach for the phone, but you caught yourself.
So
it was just.
But I started to think about how could you bring somebody up to speed quickly and in different areas? And I thought, you know what? I give them 3 questions a day, one dealing with, history, one with entertainment, one with sports. So you're well-rounded about what you can sit and talk about. If somebody brings up such and such, at least you've heard of it. I started to think about guys like Norm Van Brocklin, who was one of the outstanding quarterbacks in the 50s and 60s. But if you say Norm Van Brocklin's name today, I don't think most people would even be able to tell you who Norm Van Brocklin is.
No, I agree, unless you're of a certain age and remember that. I mean, I remember watching the 1960 NFL championship game between the Packers and the
Eagles.
And the Eagles.
Played on a Monday.
I was going to say it wasn't played on a Sunday.
Played on a Monday.
It was played on a Monday. I think
Yes.
Christmas must have been.
Christmas was Sunday, so they didn't play.
They didn't play. My dad had Monday off, and he and I remember sitting there in our pajamas watching the game.
Now, if we had a big audience, everybody'd be calling and saying, "What do you mean they didn't play the game on Sunday, even though it was Christmas?" Oh, well, back then,
Back then, they
didn't
actually
do that.
Then they actually honored holidays,
Yes. Yeah, I remember, I think the game was at Franklin Field,
right?
and one of the guys who had a big game there for the Eagles was, I want to say, Ted Dean, who was a Wichita State product, I believe, and
The big
was
tall-
a running back.
Oh
for
no!
the,
Then I was thinking of wasn't there a lineman named Ted Dean?
there might have been at some point, but
Big tall guy.
you're thinking of Ted Hendricks.
Ted Hendricks. Thank
Yeah.
you.
But Ted Dean had a nice day. I think he returned a kickoff for good yardage and had some good runs and maybe scored a TD here or there.
Mm-hmm.
But Van Brocklin was the quarterback, and I believe that Sonny Jurgensen was the backup.
Sonny Jurgensen was the backup, and I'm trying to remember the receiver, Tommy
Well, you had Tommy McDonald.
McDonald.
Pete Retzlaff
And
was another.
Retzlaff, yeah.
And there was probably another one, but it's not going to come to my. Oh, you know who else was there? Probably Bobby Walton.
Yeah, I think so.
So
By the way, going back to our discussion earlier on Mike Glennon, here's somebody retweeted something from Jeff Duncan. Whoever Jeff Duncan is must be a writer somewhere. And his tweet is: Bears' interest in Mike Glennon makes sense. Saints had a high grade on him in the 2013 NFL draft when GM Ryan Pace was in New Orleans.
well,
So-
then it might make some sense.
Then it might make some sense that they're interested in him. Jeff Duncan is a columnist at the New Orleans Times-Picayune. So.
But don't forget this. Even though I think the McCaskies are going to give, they're going to give Ryan Pace time because I think they believe in him.
I think they
but
do.
still, how much time? And you might be about halfway through your good grace window here.
Yeah.
So you better make the right choice as far as at least a quarterback to bridge. And here's the other thing: you already had one guy, at least one, maybe two guys who are veterans, who could possibly be that bridge quarterback
Sure.
that already know your system.
That know your system, and honestly, you're not going to be good this year.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather see a Hoyer. I think Connor Shaw was signed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw that.
He was.
And I would rather see that, and you draft a quarterback.
Yeah, draft one and
And have that person be that bridge.
Now,
to
let me
start
ask-
out. Why I was chuckling when you were when you made that when you were making that comment. I glanced down at the first response back on Jeff Duncan's page and said it makes. Some guy texted back and said it makes 0 sense. My 8-year-old is a better quarterback.
that is funny. Well, Jim, out of the quarterbacks that are that they talk about, because there's going to be a quarterback there in the third, in the slot that
There's
the Bears
probably
are in.
going to be one, and I'm hearing Deshaun Watson's name a lot.
Actually, I'm beginning to lean that way just through the process of elimination. Had a very better than solid college career.
Oh, great college career,
you
and he's proved himself well at the combine.
So I'd say, if he's out there, unless they're, again, they are the experts. Let's put it that way. If they see somebody that they think is a better pro type quarterback, if that's a good way to put it, maybe go for that guy.
Yeah.
The other problem, though, is there any other quarterback who's worthy of being the third person picked in the draft besides Watson? I don't think there is.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, they were talking all the names. You see Pat Mahomes' name popping up more now. But honestly, I think they're going to be lower in the draft. There's going to be quarterbacks available in the second round. John, you ready for a break?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, all right. Let's take a break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2017, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro.
You're all choked up about us being here, John. I could hear it in your voice.
I was thinking, are we meeting today or what? I forgot. I didn't forget the show, but I was thinking, okay, I don't think we met. We did the show last week, so must be on this week. And then I got the text from Jim. He was.
I give you my. Give you my ETA.
I don't know if he hit the wrong number, but he says to me, John, ETA 1049.
I hit the wrong number.
That's pretty exact, though, Jim.
I hit the wrong number, and
Okay.
actually, I was surprised when I was backing out of the garage. I looked at my phone, and it was telling me like 40 minutes. So, traffic incident on 294. I believe from the time I backed out of my garage until the time I hit Balmoral was about 29 minutes. So I had time, so I stopped over and picked up a donut and
some coffee.
Took a quick pass through the paper that was sitting there for a second,
and took a look.
Took a quick look at what's going on.
Jim, do you ever watch any of the? I was going to mention this before when we were talking about. Do you ever watch any of the combine things that they put on air?
No, I did not. I did not this year, and it's just basically because no cable, and I didn't look at ESPN or any of the tried to find any tape on the internet.
The thing that amazes me that is if you're one of the guys sitting there evaluating, and because I was in a restaurant Saturday night and they had the combine on TV, and I'm looking, and it's like it was a lineman drill, defensive lineman drill. It looked like, and I'm thinking to myself, how? First off, there's probably a hair's breadth difference between some of the guys. Maybe there's a bigger difference than that in a few of them, but most of them are pretty close. They all know how to do these drills. I'm sure they've done them for a long time, in their college, at their colleges. But I'm thinking, how do you stay alert and awake if there are any subtle differences? How do you manage to see those? Don't you get bored after watching 40 guys go through the cones and the
Man, and I mean, you have to be from an evaluation standpoint. From an evaluator standpoint, you got to be like, a total geek to be able to sit there and watch this stuff.
You do.
To evaluate them and to look for that little small thing that might make him your choice. I mean, I thought about that. He brought that up. I thought about when Dana and I were up at Michigan State last spring and went to a baseball game and sitting there behind all the scouts, all the major league scouts, watching some pitchers. And you was curious. I would have loved to have been able to sit there and go stand behind and look over there at all their clipboards, because you saw the guns come up simultaneously, the guns go down, and everybody make a note.
Well, Jim, how do you think a guy like a Big Daddy Lipscomb would have done in the here's a guy where I'll never forget one of the greatest descriptions of how a player played is they'd say Big Daddy would just take an armful of players and he'd throw them away until he ended up with the guy with the ball, and he'd keep that one.
And I'm thinking, how would somebody like Doug Atkins be evaluated today? I keep thinking about that great story of Atkins showing up a day late for camp, and Rensselaer when he showed up the next day, all of a sudden, 10:30 in the morning, they're out on the field. Doug comes out of the building. All he's wearing is a pair of shorts and his football helmet, and does one lap around the field and past George Allen. And George said, "What are you doing, Doug?" And he goes, "I'm breaking my helmet in, George," and finished his lap, went back into the building, and that was the last anybody saw of him that day. And Doug, you could always find, you can always find some Southern comfort and something in his room. And when you were invited into the room to drink, he had his bulldog laying in front of the door, and that dog wouldn't let you out until Doug said it was okay.
Well, I'm torn, Jim, between, you get a guy like Richard Sherman who says, ratings are down because they want to see us dance in the end zone. And I'm thinking, Rich, buddy, you're not Fred Astaire or John Travolta or Michael Jackson or James Brown. Nobody cares if you dance in the end zone. Or, on the other hand, you don't get any characters like a Doug Atkins anymore. I mean, so they you don't get, everybody's like in between in this little netherworld.
And Richard Sherman would have been a perfect character back in those days.
Oh yeah,
because of his his attitude, the mouth, and a great self promoter. I mean, I still think of the "You Mad Bro" T-shirts that when he was told a story about that and held up the shirt and said, "And you can go to RichardSherman.com and you can find this shirt."
You know what I was thinking about the other day is,
and Richard Sherman is an extremely intelligent,
very intelligent guy. I was thinking the other day, Jim, about the first sports book that I read that was like an eye-opener was Baseball is a Funny Game.
I read that one,
but
too. That's probably the first one I read, too.
The first great football book that I read was Paper Lion by George Plimpton. And he did such a great job putting you in the situation where, okay, George is an Englishman and he never played football. So you and I have had the experience, at least, of football, so it's not quite the same. But, I mean, if you were there...
Playing for the Newfoundland Newfs.
If you were sitting there in a pro camp and trying to take snaps and do everything a pro quarterback did, I think I'm saying in a general sense, it would be just as lost as George was.
Oh, yeah.
And he did such a great job of describing his experience.
Yeah.
And giving you some insights into some of the people who were there and their attitudes about things.
Oh, and I think he was probably the one that most responsible for introducing Alex Karras to being a genuinely funny man.
Yeah, he was.
Because I think that was the first year after Karras' suspension for gambling. I think that was the first year he came back.
It could have been. It was, somewhere in the mid-'60s probably.
Yeah, because first or second year, because him and Horning went down, I think, were suspended in, I think, 62.
Interesting how the game has changed, though, because the head coach, I think, that when he was there was George Wilson.
Yeah, former Bear.
A veteran football guy, Bears.
Former Bear.
Former Bear. And I'm sure George Wilson knew, he knew the game of football, but a totally different animal than what you have today. Guy, as you said, a football geek or a football nerd who George Wilson looked at the game, and not just George Wilson, but probably every other NFL coach, maybe with a few exceptions. Yeah. Thank you, John. Looked at the game. Totally different than a coach today looks at the game.
Oh, yeah.
They probably analyze the game to a certain degree, I'm sure. I mean, you can't be a coach without doing that. But to analyze it to the point that they do today, it's just, night and day.
Probably the one that talking about a football geek and analyzing it, living and breathing it, probably the first name comes to my mind is Belichick.
Belichick is definitely.
It's got to be that one.
You ever?
Right
I know you're not a Halberstam fan, but he wrote.
I've read his stuff.
He wrote the book Education of a Coach, which is
I've never read that one.
A short one for Halberstam. It's a couple hundred pages, maybe a little more, and talks about, the book's about Belichick, and Anthony Pinello, who's over at Rex's, he's one of the owners at Rex's on Harlem, is a huge Patriots fan. So when I go in and have a sandwich or some pasta over there, talk a little football, and I said, Anthony, I said, Belichick's got this guy with him. I don't even know if he's got an official title. He's not a coach. And I said, but he's a football geek, okay? And he watches film. And Anthony said, well, you know what? I never read the book. But he said, I watched, I don't know if it was 30 on 30 or some kind of special on ESPN. He goes, and I think they mentioned this guy. He says, yeah, there was a guy like that. They did a special about Belichick. And he says, yeah, they mentioned that guy. But these guys do nothing but look at film and analyze whatever. And it would give me, you know what? I'd quit coaching if I had to do that. It'd give me a headache.
I would sit there, in I'm sure you sat in enough film sessions after you looked at from the prior week's game, and they run your mistakes back and forth.
Sure,
and
done that.
But to look at that so much and try to analyze. Okay, well, you went to the left. You could have gone to the right. You dropped back 3 steps. Should have dropped back 2, or should have dropped back 5. Because this guy is coming from here, and he got blocked here, and you wouldn't have been able to get there.
Yeah, how could you? I'm not sure it's as much of that type of thing as I think what they're looking more at than anything is your technique. How did you run this route? How did you block this on this particular play?
Right.
And I think that's what they're looking at more than did you take a step to the right or mistakes. I think they obviously know mistakes are going to be made, but it's when things technically break down. I think that's the problems that they have, and that's what they're looking for.
And at that point in time, you're not necessarily looking at an individual. You're looking at the unit as a whole.
Oh yeah, and I think that's why. Say if you're a basketball coach, and you're looking at film, that's a much easier task. I think. I mean, it's still time consuming, but when you have to look at 11 guys working as a unit as opposed to 5. Obviously, numbers tell you that that's a little bit tougher task.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to a meeting tonight with the Ridgewood football coaches, and I may be involved next year with the Junior Rebels program.
Oh, good.
And I'm thinking, okay, what do I bring to the table? Because I would say this, out of, I don't know how many coaches will be there, but it'll be from the Junior Rebels on up to the varsity, so it'll be all the coaches. My guess is, technically, I have almost nothing to offer, but my big thing would be I'm more of an effort guy. When you're on the offside of the line, the play is not coming to your side, or going to your side. Are you running downfield and making the effort to get a block to help that runner if he clears the line? Make that play a longer play. That's where my particular focus would be, if you want to put it that way.
Mm-hmm. That'd be interesting.
These guys, though, I mean, even high school coaches today, I mean, I think the technical thing is a big thing.
Much more so. I would think much more so for a couple of reasons. One, the game has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And two, there has to be, especially with all the issues regarding concussions and all the things that develop, teaching them better technique to minimize, or at least, it's always going to be injuries, but reduce the chance
You know, the
of injuries.
interesting thing about that, though, is the way that we in high school were taught, and Little League and whatnot, were taught to tackle, would be, to me, the most obvious way to try to minimize head injuries. Somewhere, probably right about the time that we were in high school, some coaches started to teach that using the head as part of the tackling process. And to me, it's a disaster. And not just from the point of view of injuries. Injuries, obviously, I don't want to see those happen. But it's to me, it's never been a very effective form of tackling. If you think about this, if you hit a runner with your shoulder, you can wrap your arms around.
You can
that
get
runner.
your arms around it.
If you hit the runner with your head, how likely is it going to be that you're going to get your arms around that guy?
Right.
And I'm
Right.
talking about if you're fully extended.
Right.
You know what? Everybody's going to get their head involved a little bit if, how could I put this? There are certain tackles where you meet the guy maybe toward the line of close to the line of scrimmage. Now, you're not going to be form tackling as much, and you may meet him high, so your head may make some contact, but it's a totally different thing than in the open field, or if the guy gets beyond the line of scrimmage. But let's not get into that, Jim.
No.
You're
No.
you're
I was
looking at
just.
another-
I'm kind of thinking. I'm just kind of thinking where else we can go with this before we wander off on some other.
we've been on football for
45
a while.
minutes. 45 minutes. I'm trying to figure out how the Bulls can defeat the Warriors the way they did and lose this badly to the Pistons last night.
Jim, I have to say this.
Getting outscored by 18 points in the second half.
You know what? The front office is screwed up. They made, and I'm not saying this to knock. It's a popular thing to knock Hoiberg. I think Fred Hoiberg is a knowledgeable guy. In a lot of situations, he'd probably be a good coach. But they have just dealt him a bunch of garbage. I mean, I'm not talking the players are garbage, but nothing seems to fit together. And they have, these are supposed to be. If I had buddies like that,
If I get
I'd
friends,
avoid them totally.
Yeah.
Okay, because they have
Yeah.
done nothing for this guy at all.
No. Do me a favor. Don't do me any favors. And I don't know. I mean, you look at this team, and you scratch your head.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going.
You don't know where you're going with it, and it was nice. Denzel Valentine is getting more time, a little bit more time into the rotation, kind of one of the rotation guys.
They needed to get him in the.
They need to
rotation.
get him, but he drew a blank last night.
Oh, I mean, I think that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen for him. But look at Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis, what is this his second or third year? Third year.
Third year, I believe. Third year.
And you know what? There were a lot of nights that he would have drawn blanks, but now he's starting to play more and he's starting to produce a little bit more.
That's right. And
I think the same thing will happen with Valentine.
And this is the first time all year he's scored. He's been in double figures in 4 consecutive games.
And you know what? I think one of the good things that's happened. I mean, I like Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott. It's not that okay. It's great that we got rid of them, but what has happened is it's opened up some more playing time for some people, and it's almost like with a guy like say Nikola Mirotic. It's almost like you ever hear that old story about when the Romans attacked Great Britain and they went ashore and they ordered all the ships burned. So this way, hey, we either win the battle or we all, none of us are going to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's almost that type of mentality with a guy like Mirotic. Okay, you are the, you know what? We don't have Doug McDermott here now. You are the guy, so you're going to get out there every night and you're going to show us what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is okay. It's an okay strategy.
Mm-hmm.
What I find amazing though, Jim, the other day I read in the paper I think it was the game against the Clippers. Jimmy Butler was playing a lot of point. And I'm thinking, Jimmy Butler is playing the point. I said, they got 5 point guards on the roster.
What is he out there doing it? What is he doing?
You know, you got 5 guys who are point guards that are on your roster, and Jimmy Butler's playing the point.
Yeah.
And we just traded for a point guard.
Yeah. And both of them, well, let's see. Payne's a point guard, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he played 22 minutes, had 14 points last night, looked good. But when you start to look at what does a point guard do, he had 3 assists. And Jerry and Grant had 8 assists in 25 minutes. So,
it's a ball of confusion.
It's a ball of it's a ball of confusion, as they say. I was looking at they were talking in this article from Monday's paper about how the schedule sets up for their final 10 games. Feature a home game against the 76ers, a road game against the Bucks, home games against the Cavaliers and Hawks, road games against the Pelicans, Knicks, 76ers, and Nets, and home games against the Magic and Nets. Yeah, they have games with the Rockets, Celtics, Grizzlies, and Wizards before they hit that stretch. But Monday, they were talking about seeing big time progress in their game, and today they come through with, or yesterday they come through and have a pitch a game like they did here.
Exactly.
And by the way, it was interesting since I see the Cavaliers on there. I'm sure Cavaliers fans right now are reminiscing about all the memories they have from Andrew Bogut's minute with the team.
His minute with the team?
Yes, he got into the game, his first game last night, broke his leg.
Oh, jeez. Andrew Bogut.
They'll be reminiscing about that. That's like when I asked you to reminisce about Brett Lowry's great moments with the White Sox.
Oh, well, those were, yeah.
Oh, both of them.
You know, actually, Jim, I saw after we talked about that, I read I think it was the next day. Or within the next day or two, there was an article about that in the paper, and Rick Hahn made some sense to me. He said, "You know what? At the point that we re-signed Lowry, it looked like it's possible that we were, the third base market was open, and we might trade Todd Frazier."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that market then closed up,
mm-hmm.
and Frazier is staying at least for
now.
season.
He hasn't even got. I think today I saw something that he hasn't even played in an exhibition game yet.
But I'll tell you what he can't say in the paper, and I think what is left unsaid is, all right, we got Lowry, we paid him $3 million or whatever it was, and he's hurt again. I mean, come on. I mean, we love the guy. He's a hustler when he's here, but he's barely been here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least in the sense where he's been able to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was part of it too. Okay, let's just cut the ties. He'll hook on with somebody. Somebody will
pick him up.
And let's just move on.
Somebody will pick him up. I think they're going to. It's going to be interesting. I saw somebody on the over/under, and I haven't gone back to look. I think it was Bovada. He had the White Sox on the over/under on their victories this year was 69.5. I think like the second worst in baseball. That's an intriguing enough bet to take the over.
Oh yeah, I think I would take the over on the Sox. I don't think they're going to be.
I don't think they're going to be anything, sensational.
Oh,
but I would be surprised if they won less than 70 ball games.
Jim, I'm not going to say they're going to contend because I would never say that. But
no.
you know what? When you look at these divisions, and I've had people say, okay, the Sox are in this AL Central. Oh, well, the AL Central's loaded. They are. I mean,
Cleveland.
I would say. You know what? Cleveland impressed me in the World Series in the playoffs last year.
You've still got a really good ball club.
I'd say this though, to me, all of these teams are a couple injuries away from being non-contenders,
mm-hmm.
and Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City. Say if the Sox have a good year and they get good years out of a lot of guys, they stay healthy. What's to keep them from maybe contending at some point? Depending on what the other teams are. Kansas City, to me, is I wouldn't know. I don't know. I wouldn't even know if I would call them a contender. They've lost a lot.
They have, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what to look at this year with them. Obviously, the pitcher that died in the auto accident was a big part. I don't know how they're going to finish, how they're going to fix that. But I mean, you look at the teams that you have to think about. That who's going to be there in the fall. You're going to look, in the National League, you're going to look at the Cubs. You're going to look at the Dodgers. Dodgers are a good ball club. Dodgers are a good ball club. Nationals.
Yeah.
The Mets. Mets have great pitching. I don't know about their hitting. I would look at them as being prime in the National League and the American League. You got to look at Cleveland.
Yeah.
You got to look at Boston. Although I just see Sale was not happy with his first outing. And
Price is having some arm problems.
Price is having some arm problems, so they could be in trouble very easily. I think who else is I'm looking at this and thinking.
Well, the Giants might be back in contention. Cardinals.
If we've been hearing. I think the Cardinals are a little bit of ways. They've got some pitching issues this year. What's his name? Their big one that they were talking about, Reyes. Yeah, he's done for the year, if I remember.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for all the young talent to bloom in Houston. They contend, but they never have quite been able to.
Yeah.
To pull the trigger and take that next step forward. But that would be a team I'd be looking at in the American League as a possibility. I think the National League, honestly, I think the National League is the stronger league.
Do you find it fascinating and at the same time a little aggravating? There was an article in the paper a couple days ago about Jason Hamill, and I'm thinking to myself, I understand the concept that Jason Hamill probably makes too much money, and I don't know, but maybe toward the end of the season his arm gets iffy. But still came out last year with 15 wins. I think he had a decent year the year before. Okay, so now you try to fill the gap some other way. But what keeps on going through my mind is 40 years ago, there's no question you just keep Jason Hamill, solid number, whatever he is.
He would have been, back in those days, there would have been 4 starters.
Yeah.
He would have been your 4th guy.
Right. So it's just... I guess it keeps the hot stove league going. The fact that we're going to fill that spot with Brett Anderson and Mike Montgomery.
Mike Montgomery,
and it makes it a little fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, you look. It makes it interesting too. And if you think about Brett Anderson, I mean, they were talking again today, and it was one of those guys who covers on one of the websites. I just went blank on it. An interesting guy, too, Shahada Sharma. But, I mean, if you get back to the days where Brett Anderson is throwing about 58% ground balls, you got yourself a pretty doggone good effective pitcher, especially with the defense in that Cub infield.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Has the game changed so much that you're going to take a chance on a guy like Brett Anderson, or have the Brett Andersons, have teams hoping that the Brett Andersons of the world are going to re-blossom, been going on forever?
That's always been the case.
Yeah, I think so.
That's always been the case, and I thought this was I think this was one of those signings I think everybody looked at and said not much downside.
Yeah.
But a whole lot of upside.
Yeah.
On this one.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really, really good signing.
I think it can be a good signing, but it's only a good signing if he produces the same way the guy he replaced produced.
That's right.
So
that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing to see.
What about you? Hey, come on, what's his whip going to be?
I know. We got to check out what his whip is going to be. We got to figure out his bob.
I'm not. No, I'm sorry. Not his whip. His WAR.
His WAR. We got to figure his WAR, and we got to figure his FIP.
His FIP.
Fielding independent pitching. That's the key.
I love it. Fielding independent
Fielding
pitching.
independent pitching. I was going to say we should start to wrap up, but look at Davida's on there yakking.
He's on the phone. We could
Yakking on
keep
the
going.
phone.
What
We'll
the
just
heck?
keep talking.
What else? I'll tell you what. The Cubs. I look at the articles in the paper. I'll see a highlight on the TV once in a while from a Cactus League game. That's a strong ball club.
It is a really, really good ball club.
Man, oh man.
It's one of those. It's one of those you look at and say, if they can have another, can have no injuries and that, there's no reason why we can't be looking at that again, going deep into the fall.
Oh, definitely.
Probably the only thing that would concern me is the back end of the rotation, but the back end of the rotation is what concerned everybody last year.
That's true. The big thing is, and I don't know the names, but they seem to think that they've really strengthened their bullpen with some of the guys they've gotten.
Yeah, although they said Wade Davis stunk his first outing.
Yeah, we always have Rondon.
We always have Rondon. You got Rondon, you got Strope.
Yeah,
there is plenty of potential there that we could be looking at another. We could be looking at another postseason. Another entertaining postseason.
As a Cubs fan, the things that and I don't really sit there and worry about it, but I always think, okay, John Lester with his particular problems, and he's not going to have Ross to help him out with that. Contreras he'll be fine.
Sure,
but it might take a bit,
little bit.
Jake Arrieta, as good as he was 2 years ago, and he was good last year, was not as good last year as he was 2 years ago.
No, but still pretty doggone good.
Kyle Hendricks, obviously a solid pitcher. Now, did he hit his high note last year, or is he just going to go up from here? Where is he going to go? And, of course, you know what you get with John Lackey, but,
Sure.
You got some age there.
Sure. You've got Lackey probably in his final season.
With the Cubs, anyway.
Well, maybe final season period, and he doesn't want no farewell tour.
Yeah, I don't want.
I didn't come for a haircut.
By the way, when you talk about his farewell tour, which was not going to happen regardless, did you see who the heck was it that got in Paul Pierce's face the other day, last week, saying something about, hey, man, who do you think you are? You think you're Kevin Garnett or something? You don't have no farewell tour. Somebody got on him.
Somebody got on him in that one. I can't remember who it was, but I had a good laugh when I read that, too.
And I got to tell you, a guy like Paul Pierce, I'm going to miss. I think he was an outstanding player. Of course, he probably doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. He's in our basketball hall of the very, very good.
The hall of the very, very good. Yeah,
So.
Yeah, I think so. We didn't even get into the fact that Sunday is Selection Sunday. Northwestern's probably going to get into the big show for the first time ever.
I'm excited.
I'm excited for that. That's good.
That's good. That's good.
I think it's Chris Collins has done a heck of a job.
Now, is John Gross going to get fired after they laid that egg against Rutgers?
After they got beat by the worst team in the Big Ten, he better go deep into the Big Ten tournament.
Well, that would help him.
That might be his only saving grace. Otherwise, I think there's probably a good chance he's gone.
He's toast.
Yeah,
he's toast.
And all of a sudden they're being talked as being in, and then you go out and you
lay an egg
against Rutgers. It'll be interesting to see if the streak at Michigan State for all these years, 20 years in a row, going to the NCAA tournament is going to end this year, because they got to be one of those sort of bubble teams.
When people talk about the Big Ten, because over the years that we've been following it, the writers will say, well, the Big Ten is having a down year, or and it could apply to football or basketball.
Sure.
This is probably the first time that I actually would agree with the media and say the Big Ten and basketball is a little down.
It is.
But at the same time, It's been, I'll tell you what, it's been fascinating. I pick up the sports page when the Big Ten teams are playing and read the articles, and I'm like, this league has been back and forth, and you don't know who's. I mean,
This is-
Minnesota ran off a big streak,
Yeah.
and Michigan State's been up and down,
Down,
and
and-
Ohio State will jump in there and beat you.
In
Iowa,
Michigan
yeah,
and
yeah,
Iowa,
yeah.
it's like, what did they say about what is it? What was it? The Southeast Conference, one division in the Southeast Conference in football. They eat their young.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
a
you know.
very competitive
That's
year.
exactly it. So we'll talk about next time we get together in a couple of weeks. It'll be in the middle of the NCAA tournament.
All right, I love that.
Because they'll have had the first couple of rounds, and we'll see who's moving on to there. We don't have any high school basketball to talk about after Ridgewood's performance,
Yeah,
and we'll just let it go at that.
sure.
But,
We better.
We better, because we don't want to get in trouble.
No,
No, that's for sure.
we don't like to get in trouble.
We never get in trouble. All right, John, we're going to wrap it up. You get it all set. We're going to get on out of here. Hope you enjoyed this little hour and change of nonsense that we get together and do a couple of times a month, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks and try to figure out what to talk about, and we'll spend an hour doing that. So until that time, we are Taillights.
You've been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2017, on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikanda. Today's broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, March the 7th, the year 2017. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And don't forget, this coming Sunday, March the 12th, we spring ahead 1 hour. That's right, Daylight Saving Time returns this Sunday, March the 12th. And also, check the batteries in your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Please be safe. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois.